Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavansam Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunathantam Tvam Sajivam Sattaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakhantam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Vanilla Mataji, Samyukta Mataji, Hema Mataji, Shirisha Mataji, Lakshmi Mataji.
Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhupada.
యాక్చువల్గా నేను వెన్నెల మాతాజిని హోస్ట్ చేసిన నాకు ఒక 15 minutes 20 minutes లో ఉంటా కాల్, తర్వాత ఒక ఆఫీస్ కాల్ ఉంది 7కి, 15-20 minutes ఉంటా, తర్వాత ఉంటా, బట్ ఐ వోంట్ బి రీడింగ్. ఓకే, సో మాతాజీ విల్ కంటిన్యూ. సో let us begin with Mangalacharna, please. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukhaṁ karoti vācālam pangum langayate girimet krupātamaham vande Shri Gurum Dīnatarinam Paramanandam Madhavam Sri Chaitanyam Ishwaram. Om apavitra pavitro va sarvavastam gatopi va yasmaret pundarikaksham sabhyabhyantaram suchihi. Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu Sri Vishnu. Yeah, manam we are at this paragraph, the different deities. First chapter undi, anti-material worlds. Anti-material worlds is nothing but spiritual worlds. Anti-material means which is not material. Anti, that means it's spiritual. Nothing but the definition is spiritual world. Spiritual world and spirit soul. So that's what Prabhupada is discussing different things in this chapter. So we'll continue. Okay, Mataji, please begin. I'll read at last. Okay, go ahead. Thank you. You can conduct, Mataji. You can call names and go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Hema Mataji.
Yes, Mataji. The different deities or powerful directing officers are appointed to act in the administration of cosmic activities. Foolish people who are unable to see the intricacies of cosmic management laugh at the idea of personal management of fire, air, electricity, days, nights, etc. by demigods. But the perfect yogis know how to satisfy these unseen administrators of material affairs and taking advantage of the goodwill of these administrators leave their material bodies at will during opportune moments arranged for entrance into the anti-material universe or into the highest planets of the material sky. In the higher planets of the material world, the yogis can enjoy more comfortable and more pleasant lives for hundreds of thousands of years. But life in those planets is not eternal. Those who desire eternal life enter into the anti-material universe through mystic powers at certain opportune moments created by the demigod, administrators of cosmic affairs, administrators unseen by the gross materialists who reside on this seventh class planet called Earth. Those who are yogis but who die at an opportune moment due to pious acts of sacrifice, charity, penance, etc., can rise to the higher planets after death, but are subject to return to this planet, Earth. Their going forth take place at a period known as Dhuma, the dark, moonless half of the month, or when sun is on its southern path. In summary, the Bhagavad Gita recommends that one adopt the means of devotional service or anti-material activities if one wishes to enter the anti-material world. Those who adopt the means of devotional service as prescribed by the expert transcendentalists are never disappointed in their attempts to enter the anti-material world. Although the obstacles are many, the devotees of Lord Krishna can easily overcome them by rigidly following the path outlined by the transcendental devotees. Such devotees, who are passengers progressing in the journey of life toward, toward the anti-material kingdom of God, are never bewildered. No one is cheated or disappointed when he adopts the guaranteed path of devotion for entrance into the anti-material universe. One can easily attain all the results that are derived from the studies of the Vedas, performances of sacrifice, practices of penance, and offerings of charities simply by the unilateral performance of devotional service, technically known as Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is therefore the great pinnacle for all, and it has been made easy to practice, especially in this iron age, by Lord Krishna himself in his most sublime, liberal, and magnificent appearance as Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya, 1486 to 1534, who appeared in Bengal and spread the Sankirtana movement, singing, dancing, and chanting the names of God throughout India. By Lord Chaitanya's grace, one can quickly pick up the principles of Bhakti Yoga. Thus, all misgivings in the heart will disappear. The fire of material tribulation will be extinguished, and transcendental bliss will be assured.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Maybe someone else can. Hare Krishna Lakshmi Mataji, do you want to?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Yeah.
Mataji, the paragraph is in the 5th chapter. Where should I start? Mataji? In the 5th chapter. In the 5th chapter of Brahma Samhita, there is a description of the variegated planetary system that is within the material world. It is also indicated in the Bhagavad Gita that there are very variegated planetary systems in hundreds of thousands of material universes, and that altogether these universes comprise only a fraction, 1/4 of the creative energy of the Godhead. The majority, 3/4 of the Lord's creative energy is manifested in the spiritual sky, called the Paravyoma or the Vaikuntha Loka. These instructions of the Brahma Samhita and Bhagavad Gita may be finally confirmed by the material scientist as he researches into the existence of the anti-material world. In addition, in February 21st, 1960, Moscow News release reported Russia's well-known professor of astronomy, Boris Voronosov Veliaminov, said that there must be an infinite number of planets in the universe inhabited by beings endowed with reason. This statement of Russia, an astronomer, is a confirmation of the information given in the Brahma Samhita, which states that Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagandanda Koti Kotishva Asheshva Vasudhadi Vibhuti Bhinnam Tad Brahma Nishkalam Anantam Ashesha Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. According to this quote from the Brahma Samhita, there are not only infinite number of planets as confirmed by the Russian astronomer, but there are also infinite numbers of universes. All these infinite universes with their infinite planets within or floating on and are produced from the Brahman effulgence emanating from the transcendental body of Mahavishnu, who is worshipped by Brahma, the presiding deity of the universe in which we are residing. The Russian astronomer also confirms that all the planets which are estimated to be not less than 100 million are inhabited. In the Brahma Samhita, there is indicated that in each and every one of the infinite number of universes, there are infinite number of variegated planets. The astronomer's view was seconded by Professor Vladimir Halpatov, a biologist who maintained that some of the above mentioned planets had reached a state of development corresponding to that of the Earth. The report from Moscow continued. It could be that life similar to that on Earth flourishes on such planets. Doctor of Chemistry Nikolai Giro, covering the problem of atmosphere on the planets, pointed out that the organism of Martian, for instance, could very well adapt itself to normal existence with a low body temperature. He said that he felt that the gaseous composition of the atmosphere of Mars was quite suitable to sustain life of beings which have become adapted to it. The adaptability of organisms in different varieties of planets is described in the Brahma Samhita as Vibhuti Bhinnam. That is, each and every one of the innumerable planets within the universe is endowed with a particular type of atmosphere. And the living beings there are advanced in science, psychology, etc., according to the superiority of or inferiority of the atmosphere. Vibhuti means specific power. Vibhuti means specific power, and Bhinnam means variegated. Scientists who are attempting to explore outer space in an attempt to reach other planets by mechanical means must realize that organisms adapted to the atmosphere of the Earth cannot exist in the atmospheres of other planets. As such, man's attempts to reach the moon, the sun, or Mars will be completely futile because of the different atmospheres prevailing on those planets. Individually, however, one can attempt to go to any planet he desires, but this is only possible by psychological changes in the mind. Mind is the nucleus of the material body. The gradual evolutionary progress of the material body depends on psychological changes within the mind. The change of the bodily construction of a worm into that of a butterfly, and in modern medical science, the conversion of a man's body into that of a woman, or vice versa, and are more or less dependent on psychological changes. In the Bhagavad Gita,
Thank you,
it is
Mataji.
said, okay, thank you, Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Someone else can you read? Nikta Mataji or Samyukta Mataji? Can you please continue?
Hare Krishna Mataji. I'll read Mataji.
Okay, Mataji, please.
In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that if a man at the time of death concentrates his mind upon the form of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and while so doing relinquishes his body, he at once enters the spiritual existence of the anti-material world. This means that anyone who trains the mind to turn from matter to the spiritual form of the Godhead by performance of the prescribed rules of devotional service can easily attain the kingdom of God in the anti-material sky. And of this there is no doubt. And in the same way, if one desires enter into any other planet of the material sky, he can go there just after quitting the present body, that is after death. Thus, if someone wants to go to the moon, the sun, or Mars, he can do simply by performing acts for that purpose. The Bhagavad Gita confirms this statement in the following words: that upon which a person meditates at the time of death, quitting his body, absorbed in thought thereof, that particular things he attains after death. Maharaja Bharata, despite a life of severe penances, thought of a stag at the time of his death and thus became a stag after death. However, he did retain a clear consciousness of his past life and realized his mistake. It is important to realize that one's thoughts at the time of death are influenced by the actual deeds which one performs during his life. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd Canto, chapter 32, the process of entering the moon is described as follows. Materialistic minded men who have no information of the kingdom of God are always mad after material acquisition of wealth, fame, and adoration. Such men are interested in the progressive weal of their particular family unit for their own self-satisfaction and so are also interested in the progress of social and national welfare. These men attain their desired objects by material activities. They are mechanically engaged in the ritualistic discharge of prescribed duties and are consequently inclined to satisfy the pithas or bygone forefathers and controlling demigods by performance of sacrifices as prescribed by the revealed scriptures. Addicted to such acts of sacrifices and ceremonial observances, such souls enter into the moon after death. When one is thus promoted to the moon, he receives the capacity to enjoy the drinking of somarasa, a celestial beverage. The moon is a place where the demigod Chandra is the predominating deity. The atmosphere and amenities of life there are far more comfortable and advantageous than those here on earth. After reaching the moon, if a soul does not utilize the opportunity for promotion to better planets, he is degraded and forced to return to Earth or a similar planet. However, materialistic persons, although they may attain to the topmost planetary system, are certainly annihilated at the time of the cosmic manifestation's dissolution. Shall I read, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji. Or can you summarize, Mataji, what you understood?
Like Mataji, what I understood is మనం చనిపోయేటప్పుడు ఏదైతే తలుచుకుంటామో విల్ గెట్ ద సేమ్ బర్త్ ఇన్ ద నెక్స్ట్ లైఫ్ Mataji. So
in Bhagavad Gita there are 2 slokas, Mataji.
yes,
Yeah. So
yes,
here Prabhupada is giving example of Bharat Maharaj's life where he
remembers Stag.
Yeah.
Yes, Mataji.
He ended Vanaprastha life and went into forest for performing devotional service, but unfortunately he gets attached to a stag and takes the next life as a stag.
Yes, Mataji.
Anyone else want to read, Mataji? Srisha Mataji? Likta Mataji, Srisha Mataji.
Yes. As far as the planetary system of the spiritual sky is concerned, there are unlimited Vaikunta planets in the Parayoma. The Vaikuntas are spiritual planets which are manifestations of the internal potency of the Lord. And the ratio of these planets to the material planets, external energy, in the material sky is 3:1. So the poor materialist is busy making political adjustments on a planet which is most insignificant in God's creation. To say nothing of this planet Earth, the whole universe with innumerable planets throughout the galaxies is comparable to a grain of mustard seed in a bag full of mustard seeds. But the poor materialist make plans to live comfortably here and thus waste his valuable human energy in something which is doomed to frustration. Instead of wasting his time with business speculations, he might have sought the life of plain living and higher spiritual thinking and thus saved himself from perpetual materialistic unrest. Even if a materialist wants to enjoy developed material facilities, he can transfer himself to planets where he can experience material pleasures much more advanced than those available on the Earth planet. But the best plan is to prepare oneself to return to the spiritual sky after leaving the body. However, if one is intent on enjoying material facilities, one can transfer himself to other planets in the material sky by utilizing yogic powers. The powerful spaceships of the astronauts are but childish entertainments are of no use for this purpose. The Ashtanga Yoga system is also materialistic in as much as it teaches one to control the movements of air within the material body. The spiritual spark, the soul, is floating on air within the body, and inhalation and exhalation are the waves of that air containing the soul. Therefore, the yoga system is a materialistic art of controlling. is this air by transferring it from the stomach to the navel, from the chest to the collarbone, and from there to the eyeballs, and from there to the cerebellum, and from there to any desired planet. The velocity of air and light are taken into consideration by the material scientist, but he has no information of the velocity of the mind and intelligence. We have some limited experience of the velocity of the mind because in a moment we can transfer our minds places hundreds of thousands of miles away. Intelligence is even finer. Finer than intelligence is the soul, which is not matter like mind and intelligence, but is spirit or antimatter. The soul is hundreds of thousands of times finer and more powerful than intelligence. We can thus only imagine the velocity of the soul in its traveling from one planet to another. Needless to say, the soul travels by its own strength and not with the help of any kind of material vehicle. The best civilization of
Thank you, Mataji.
eatings. Can I continue?
Sure, Mataji. Okay, please complete.
Oh, the best civilization of eating, sleeping, fearing, and sense gratifying has misled modern man into forgetting how powerful a soul he has. As we have already described, the soul is a spiritual spark which is many, many times more illuminating, dazzling, and powerful than sun, more or electricity. Human life is spoiled when man does not realize his real identity with his soul. Lord Chaitanya appeared with his disciple Nityananda to save man from this type of misleading civilization.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Can you brief what you understood?
Yes. No, Mataji. From this.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Below paragraph, Mataji. From here. What I understood is, so we are wasting the lot of our energy in this materialistic world. So
Yeah, Mataji, we are trying to reach other planets by materialistic means.
yes, in the way, yes.
Prabhupada explains it's like childish entertainments which are of no use.
Yes.
Spaceships. Like even by Ashtanga yoga and yogic practices, we can move the life force from different chakras in our body, from navel to chest and all, to cerebellum, and from there to any desired planets. But we can't enter the spiritual planet. Only by devotional service we can enter the spiritual planet. We are just wasting traveling in 1/4 of the entire Brahmanda, which is the material universe, instead of trying to come back to Godhead, which consists of 3/4 of the complete creation. Anyone else wants to read?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
I'll continue.
Okay.
Srimad Bhagavatam also describes how yogis can travel to all the planets in the universe when the visual force is lifted to the vital force is lifted to the cerebellum. There is every chance of this force bursting out from the eyes, nose, ears, etc., as these are places which are known as the seventh orbit of the vital force. But the yogis can black out these holes by complete suspension of air. The yogi then concentrates the vital force in the middle position, that is between the eyebrows. At this position, the yogis can think of the planet into which he wants to enter after leaving the body. He can then decide whether he wants to go to the abode of Krishna in the transcendental Vaikunthas, from which he will not be required to descend into the material world, or to travel to higher planets in the material universe. the perfect yogi is at liberty to do either. For the perfect yogi who has attained success in the method of leaving his body in perfect consciousness, transferring from one planet to another is an ordinary man's walking to the grocery store. As already discussed, the material body is just a covering of the spiritual soul. Mind and intelligence are the undercoverings, and the gross body of earth, water, air, etc. is the overcoating of the soul. As such, any advanced soul who has realized himself by the yogic process, who knows the relationship between matter and spirit, can leave the gross dress of the soul in perfect order and he desires. By the grace of God, we have complete freedom. Because the Lord is kind to us, we can live anywhere, either in the spiritual sky or in the material sky, upon whichever planet we desire. However, misuse of this freedom causes one to fall down into the material world and suffer the threefold miseries of conditioned life. The living of the miserable life in the material world by dint of the soul choice is nicely illustrated by Milton in Paradise Lost. Similarly, by choice, the soul can regain paradise and return home back to Godhead. Can I continue, Mataji?
Yes, Mataji, please continue.
At the critical time of death, one can place the vital force between two eyebrows and decide where he wants to go. If he is reluctant to maintain any connection with the material world, he can, in less than a second, reach the transcendental Vaikuntha and appear there completely in his spiritual body, which will be suitable for him in the spiritual atmosphere. He has simply to desire to leave the material world in both finer and grosser forms, and then move the vital force to the topmost part of the skull and leave the body from the hole in the skull called the Brahma Randra. This is the highest perfection in the practice of yoga.
Thank you, Mataji. What did you understand?
This is not our body, Mataji. Just the body is that the soul covered of this body.
Yeah, Mataji. Like yogis can travel to different planets. How they can travel is explained in Bhagavatam. And generally, like it is said that a person who is not a yogi, the life vital force lives from one of the Navarandras, but a proper yogi can block all the holes and he can make the vital force leave from the Brahmarandra. Anyone else wants to? Hema Mataji, maybe you can have it. Hare Krishna, Hema Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. I think Samyukta Mataji wants to read.
Samyukta, you want to read Mataji? Samyukta Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, Mataji.
Mataji, మీరు చదవండి చదవండి Mataji. Hema Mataji.
Mataji, Samyukta Mataji. You read Mataji, I'll do the next one, Mataji.
Okay, Mataji, thank you. From of course, right, Mataji?
Yeah, of course.
Of course, man is endowed with free will, and as such, if he does not want to free himself of the material world, he may enjoy the life of Brahmapada, occupation of the post of Brahma, and visit Siddhaloka, the planets of materially perfect beings who have full abilities to control gravity, space, time, etc. To visit these higher planets in the material universe, one need not give up his mind and intelligence, finer matter, but need only give up grosser matter, the material body. Man-made satellites and mechanical space vehicles will never be able to carry human beings to the planets of outer space. Men cannot even go on their much advertised trips up to the moon, for as we have already stated, the atmosphere on such higher planets is different from the atmosphere here on Earth. Each and every planet has its particular atmosphere. And if one wants to travel to any particular planet within the material universe, one has to have a material body exactly adapted to the climatic condition of that planet. For instance, if one wants to go from India to Europe, where the climatic condition is different, one has to change his dress accordingly. Similarly, a complete change of body is necessary if one wants to go to the transcendental planets of Vaikuntha. If one wants to go to the higher planets, he can keep his finer dress of mind, intelligence, and ego, but has to leave his gross dress body made of earth, water, fire, etc. When one goes to a transcendental planet, however, it is necessary to change both the finer and gross bodies, for one has to reach the spiritual sky completely in a spiritual form. This change of dress will take place automatically at the time of death if one so desires. But this desire is possible at death only if the desire is cultivated during life. Where one's treasure are, there also is one's heart. When one practices devotional service, one cultivates a desire for the kingdom of God. The following details outline a general practice by which one can prepare himself for an easy journey to Vaikuntha, anti-material planets, where life is free from birth, old age, disease, and death. General practice, positive functions. The serious candidate must accept a bona fide spiritual master in order to be trained scientifically. Because the senses are material, it is not at all possible to realize the transcendence by them. Therefore, the senses have to be spiritualized by the prescribed method under the direction of the spiritual master. When the student has chosen a bona fide spiritual master, he must take the proper initiation from him. This marks the beginning of spiritual training. The candidate must be prepared to satisfy the spiritual master in every way. A bona fide spiritual master who is fully cognizant of the methods of spiritual science, learned the spiritual scriptures such as Bhagavad Gita, Vedanta, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Upanishads, and who is also a realized soul who has made a tangible connection with the Supreme Lord, is the transparent medium by which the willing candidate is led to the path of the Vaikunthas. The spiritual master must be satisfied in all respects, because simply by his good wishes, a candidate can make wonderful progress along the path. Shall I read Mataji or someone else?
Yeah, Mataji, you can maybe. Thank you, Mataji. You can brief what you read.
Yes, Mataji. So by the gross body, wherever we want to go, we can go, Mataji, but we can't go to the spiritual Vaikuntha planet. If we want to go to Vaikuntha, means we want spiritual knowledge. So,
with our current gross body, we can't go to other planets.
Yes, Mataji. So we have to be spiritual. Then only it is easy to go to Vaikuntha. But that is also difficult. We have to practice during the life. So if we desire, like at the time of death, we can go to Vaikuntha planet.
Yeah, Mataji. I mean, with our subtle bodies, we can go to other planets. But if we want to go to Vaikuntha, we have to give up both our gross and subtle bodies.
Subtle body. Yes, Mataji.
If we want to go to other planets, our gross body, we can't go because each planet's atmosphere is different. So we have to have a subtle body according to that kind of atmosphere. So
yes,
with our subtle body, we can go to different planets. But if we want to go to Vaikuntha, we have to give up both our subtle and gross body. And for that, we have to practice our whole life. Otherwise,
whole life. And here, spiritual master, Mataji. Bona fide spiritual master is important.
Yeah, basically these 4 points summarized in Bhagavad Gita, Tadvidhi Pradipatana.
Yes, Mataji.
We have to approach a spiritual master. Then
master.
have to take initiation from him and learn the proper
to follow his instructions.
The proper intelligence to spiritualize our senses.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you.
Hema Mataji, do you want to continue?
Yes, Mataji. Fourth point, Kalmataji.
Mataji.
The intelligent candidate places intelligent questions to the spiritual master in order to clear his path of all uncertainties. The spiritual master shows the way, not whimsically, but in accordance with the principles of the authorities who have actually traversed the path. The names of these authorities are disclosed in the scriptures, and one has simply to follow them under the direction of the spiritual master. The spiritual master never deviates from the path of the authorities. The candidate should always try to follow in the footsteps of the great sages who have practiced their method and obtained success. This should be taken as a motto in life. One should not superficially imitate them, but should follow them sincerely in terms of the particular time and circumstances. The candidate must be prepared to change his habits in terms of the instructions contained in the books of authority. And for the satisfaction of the Lord, he must be prepared to sacrifice both sense gratification and sense abnegation, following the example of Arjuna. The candidate should live in a spiritual atmosphere. He must be satisfied with as much wealth as is sufficient for maintenance only. He should not try to amass more wealth than is necessary to sustain himself in a simple way. He must observe the fasting days, such as the 11th day of the growing and waning moon. He must show respect to the banyan tree, the cow, the learned brahmana, and the devotee. These are the first stepping stones toward the path of devotional service. Gradually, one has to adopt other items which are negative in character. One should avoid offenses in the discharge of devotional service and in chanting the holy names. He should avoid extensive association with non-devotees. He must not take on unlimited disciples. This means that a candidate who has successfully followed the first 12 items can also become a spiritual master himself, just as a student becomes a monitor in class with a limited number of disciples. He must not pose himself as a vastly learned man simply by quoting statements in them. He must have solid knowledge of the necessary books without superfluous knowledge in others. A regular and successful practice of the above 14 items will enable the candidate to maintain mental equilibrium even amidst great trials of material loss and gain. In the next stage, the candidate does not become afflicted by lamentation and illusion. He does not deride others' mode of religion or worship, nor does he deride the personality of Godhead or his devotees. He never tolerates blasphemy against the Lord or his devotees. He should not indulge in the discussion of topics dealing with the relationship between man and woman, nor should he engage in numerous topics concerning others' family affairs. He should not inflict pain either in body or in mind upon other living beings, whomever they may be. Out of the above 20 items, the first 3 positive items are imperative and most essential for the serious candidate. There are 44 other items to be followed by the serious candidate, but Lord Chaitanya has selected 5 as the most important. These were selected owing to the present conditions of civic life. They are as follows. 1. One should associate with the devotees. Association with devotees is made possible by hearing them attentively, by asking them relevant questions, by supplying them food, and by accepting food from them, and by giving them charity and by accepting from them whatever they offer. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in all circumstances. The chanting of the Lord's name is an easy and inexpensive process of realization. One can chant any of the innumerable names of the Lord at any time. One should try to avoid offenses. There are 10 offenses which one can commit while chanting the transcendental names, and these should be avoided as far as possible. But in any event, one should try to chant the holy names of the Lord at all times. One should hear the transcendental topics enunciated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This hearing is made possible through platform lectures by bona fide devotees and by authorized translations of the Bhagavatam. One should make his home at Mathura, the birthplace of Lord Krishna. Or one may make his home as good as Mathura by installing the deities of the Lord to be worshipped by all members of the family after proper initiation from the spiritual master. One should worship the installed deity with attention and devotion so that the whole atmosphere of one's home becomes the replica of the Lord's abode. This is made possible by the direction of spiritual master who knows the transcendental art and can show the candidate the proper method. The above 5 items can be adopted by any man in any part of the world. Thus, anyone can prepare himself for returning home, back to Godhead, by the simple method recognized by authorities such as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who specifically advented himself to deliver the fallen souls of this age. Continue, Jalamati.
ఇక్కడ వరకు summarize చేయండి మాతాజీ.
Yeah, so ఇక్కడ candidates devotees ఎలా ఉండాలని చెప్తున్నారు మాతాజీ. First, spiritual master, we have to take initiation తీసుకోవాలి, and then we should abide to the scriptures and the books of authority.
Yeah.
And we should inquire submissively, and మనం imitate చేయకూడదు మన spiritual master. We should just give guidance.
Yes,
What he has taught, we have to hear him properly and sincerely.
Yes, Mataji. Actually, all these points are there in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu or Nectar of Devotion, Mataji.
Yeah.
It is given as pravritti and nivritti, things that we should do and things we should not avoid. We should not do.
Yes, Mataji. And then Malli Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ichina out of 45 most important points put cheptaru.
One should associate, one should chant the holiness in all circumstances.
In Nectar of Instruction అనుకుంటాను కదా మాతాజీ. First,
Yeah, Nectar of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu.
yeah.
Nectar of Devotion, Mataji.
Okay.
And should have here transcendental topics.
Hare Krishna.
Who wants to read? Likta Mataji, do you want to continue? Or Lakshmi Mataji?
Yeah, Mataji. The whole process okay. The whole process of transferring oneself to the spiritual sky involves gradually liquidating the material composition of the grass and subtle coverings of the spirit soul. The above mentioned 5 items of devotional activities are so spiritually powerful that their performance by a devotee, even in the preliminary stage, can very quickly promote the sincere executor to the stage of bhava, the stage just prior to love of Godhead, or emotion on the spiritual plane, which is transcendental to mental and intellectual functions. A complete absorption in bhava or love of God makes one fit to be transferred to a spiritual sky just after leaving the material tabernacle. The perfection of love of God by a devotee actually situates him on the spiritual platform, even though he may still maintain a gross material body. He becomes like a red-hot iron which, when in contact with fire, actually ceases to be iron and acts like fire. These things are made possible by the Lord's inscrutable and inconceivable energy, which material science has not the scope to calculate. One should therefore engage himself in devotional service with absolute faith, and to make his faith steadfast, one should seek the association of the standard devotees of the Lord by physical association if possible, or by thinking of them. This association will help one develop factual devotional service to the Lord, which will cause all material misgivings to disappear like a flash of lightning. All these different stages of spiritual realization will be personally felt by the candidate, and this will create in him a firm belief that he is making positive progress on the way to the spiritual sky. Then he will become sincerely attached to the Lord and his abode. Such is the gradual process of evolving love of God, which is the prime necessity for the human form of life. There are instances in history of great personalities, including sages and kings, who attain perfection by this process. Some of them attain success even by adhering to the one single item of devotional service with faith and perseverance. Some of these personalities are listed below. Emperor Parikshit attained attained a spiritual platform simply by hearing from such an authority as Sri Shukadeva Goswami. Sri Shukadeva Goswami attained the same simply by recitation, verbatim of the transcendental message when he received from his great father, Sri Vasudeva. Emperor Prahlada attained spiritual success by remembering the Lord constantly in pursuance of instructions given by Sri Narada Muni with great saint and devotee. Lakshmi Ji, the goddess of fortune, attained success simply by sitting and serving the lotus feet of the Lord. King Prutu attained success simply by worshipping the Lord. Akrura, the charioteer, attained success simply by chanting prayers for the Lord. Hanuman, Mahavira, the famous non-human devotee of Lord Sri Ramachandra attained success simply by carrying out the orders of the Lord. Arjuna, the great warrior, attained the same perfection simply by making friends with the Lord, who delivered the message of Bhagavad Gita to enlighten Arjuna and his followers. Emperor Bali attained success by surrendering everything unto the Lord, including his personal body. These are 9 standard modes of devotional service to the Lord, and a candidate can choose to adopt any 1, 2, 3, 4, or all, however he likes. All these services rendered to the absolute are in themselves absolute, with none of the quantitative or qualitative differences found on the material platform. On the spiritual platform, everything is identical with everything else, although there is transcendental variegatedness. Emperor Ambarish adopted all the above more items.
9
All the above 9 items, and he attained perfect success. It was he who engaged his mind on the lotus feet of the Lord, his voice in describing the spiritual world, his hands in cleaning the temple of the Lord, his ears in submissively hearing the words of the Lord Sri Krishna, his eyes in viewing the deities of the Lord, his body in touching the bodies of the devotees, his nostrils in smelling the flowers offered to the Lord, his tongue in tasting the food offered to the Lord, his legs in visiting the temple of the Lord, and all the energy of his life in executing the services of the Lord without in the least desiring his own sense gratification. All these activities helped him attain the perfect stage of life, which defeats the dexterities of material science.
Thank you.
Thank
Can
you.
you please,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Lakshmi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Can I read?
Let's briefly see. Like here, Prabhupada is explaining that the preliminary stage, which is bhava before prema, we have 9 stages of bhakti. So once we come to bhava stage, we will be able to understand the future. So here, Prabhupada is explaining the Navavidha Bhakti, like how just one single item in Navavidha Bhakti can help us attain the supreme love of God. Like Parikshit Maharaj by Shravanam, Sukdev Goswami by Kirtanam, Prahlad Maharaj by Smaranam, Lakshmi Devi by Pada Sevanam, Krut Maharaj by Archanam, Akrura by Vandanam, Hanuman by Dasim, Arjuna by Sakya, and Vali Maharaj by Atmanivedana. And here Prabhupada is explaining how Ambarish Maharaj used all his senses in service of Lord to attain the perfect state of life. Yes, Rishi Mataji, please continue.
It is therefore important for all human beings to adopt these principles of spiritual realization for the perfection of life. A human being's only obligation is spiritual realization. Unfortunately, in modern civilization, human society is too busy in discharging national duties. Actually, national duties, social duties, and humanitarian duties are obligatory only to those who are bereft of spiritual duties. As soon as a man takes his birth on this earth, not only does he have national, social, and humanitarian obligations, but he also has obligations to the demigods who supply air, light, water, etc.
He also has obligations to the great sages who have left behind them vast treasure houses of knowledge to guide him through life. He has obligations to all kinds of living beings, to his forefathers, family members, and so forth and so on. But as soon as one engages himself in the one single obligatory duty, the duty of spiritual perfection, then he automatically liquidates all other obligations without having to make separate efforts. A devotee of the Lord is never a disturbing element in society. On the contrary, he is the great social asset, since no sincere devotee is attracted to sinful actions. As soon as a man becomes a pure devotee, he can do instable, selfless service to society for the peace of prosperity of all concerned in this life and in the next. But even if such a devotee commits some offense, the Lord himself respites it in no time. Therefore, there is no need for a devotee to cultivate materialistic knowledge, nor does a devotee need to renounce everything and live as a hermit. He can simply remain at home and execute devotional service smoothly in any order of life. And there are instances in history of extremely cruel men becoming kind-hearted simply by the execution of devotional service, knowledge, and abnegation of an inferior way of life follow automatically in the life of a pure devotee without his having to make extraneous effort. The spiritual art and science of devotional service is the highest contribution of Indian sages to the rest of the world. Therefore, everyone who has taken his birth in India has an obligation to perfect his life by adopting the principles of this great art and science and distributing it to the rest of the world, which is still ignorant of the ultimate aim of life. Human society is destined to reach the stage of perfection by gradual development of knowledge. Indian sages, however, have already reached that position. Why do others have to wait for thousands and thousands of years to attain their heights? Why not give them the information immediately in a systematic way so that they may save time and energy? They should take advantage of a life for which they may have labored millions of years to attain. A Russian fiction writer is now contributing suggestions to the rest of the world that scientific progress can help man to live forever. Of course, he does not believe in a supreme being who is creator. Yet we welcome his suggestion because we know that actual progress in scientific knowledge will certainly take men to spiritual sky and inform the scientist that there is supreme creator who has full potencies behind all materialistic scientific conceptions. As maintained, every living being is eternal in form, but he has to change his outer coverings, gross and subtle. And this changing process is technically known as life and death. As long as a living being has to put on the shackles of material bondage, there is no relief from this changing process, which continues even in the highest stage of material life. The Russian fiction writer may speculate, as fiction writers are apt to do, but saner people with some knowledge of natural law will not agree that man can live forever within this material world. A naturalist can see the general course of material nature simply by studying a piece of fruit. A small fruit develops from a flower, grows, stays for some time on a branch, becomes full grown, repents, then begins to dwindle daily until it finally falls from the tree and commences to decompose into the earth and at last mingles with the earth, leaving behind its seed, which is its turn grows to become a tree and produces many fruits in time, which will all meet the same fate and go on and so on.
Thank you, Mataji. Can you please brief what you?
Yeah. So some human beings will adapt some principles of self-realization, Mataji, spiritual realization. Mataji, you can. I unable to tell Mataji.
It's okay. Like here, Prabhupada is explaining that once once we take human form of life, we are obligated to many. We have many obligations like to demigods who supply all the light, air, water, and sages who supply Vedic knowledge and everyone. But once we get spiritual perfection, then it all automatically liquidates all the obligations, and we need not make any separate efforts.
Similarly, Mataji.
Sorry. Yeah. Please continue. Hare Krishna. Who wants to begin?
I'll read Mataji.
Yeah, Mataji, please.
Similarly, a living being, as a spiritual spark, a part of the Supreme Being, takes its organic form in the womb of a mother just after sexual intercourse. It grows little by little within the womb, is born, then continues growing, becomes a child boy, youth, adult, old man, then finally dwindles and meets death. Despite all the good wishes and hopeful pipe dreams of fiction writers, by comparison, there is no difference between man and fruit. Like the fruit, the man may leave behind him his seeds of numerous children, but he cannot exist eternally within his material body due to the law of material nature. How can anyone ignore the law of material nature? No material scientist can change the stringent laws of nature, however boastful he may be. No astronomer or scientist can change the course of the planets. He can only manufacture a paltry toy planet, which he calls a satellite. Foolish children may be impressed by this and may give a great deal of credit to the inventors of modern satellites, Sputniks, etc. But the saner section of humanity gives more credit to the creator of gigantic satellites, namely the sun, stars, and planets, of which the material scientist can see no end. If a small toy satellite has a creator in Russia or America, it is reasonable that the gigantic satellites have their creator in the spiritual sky. If a toy satellite requires so many scientific brains for its manufacture and its orbiting, what kind of subtle and perfect brain created galaxies of stars and maintains them in their orbits? Thus far, the atheistic class have not been able to answer this. Non-believers put forward their own theories of the creation, which usually result in statements such as, "It's hard to understand. Our imagination cannot conceive it, but it's quite possible. It's comprehensible, incomprehensible, and so forth." This only means that their information has no authoritative basis and is not backed by scientific data. They simply speculate. However, authorized information is available in the Bhagavad Gita. For instance, the Bhagavad Gita informs us that within the material world they are living, whose duration of life covers 43 lakhs into 1000 into 2 into 30 into 12 into 100 solar years. We accept the Bhagavad Gita as the authority because this book of knowledge was so accepted by India's great sages like Shankaracharya, Sri Ramanujacharya, Sri Madhvacharya, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Bhagavad Gita indicates that in the material world are all component form are subject to decay and death, regardless of the duration of life. Therefore, all material shapes are subjected to the law of change, although potentially the material energy is conserved. Potentially, everything is eternal, but in the material world, makes, takes shape, remains for some time, develops into maturity, grows old, began to dwindle, and at last disappears again. This is the case with all material objects. The materialist suggestion that beyond the material sky, there is some other form, which is beyond the boundary of visibility, and which is strange and inconceivable, is but a faint indication of the spiritual sky. However, the basic principle of spirit is much closer, for it functions with all living beings. When the spiritual principle is out of the material body, then the material body has no life. Within the body of a child, for instance, the spiritual presence principle is present, and therefore changes takes place in the body and it develops. But if the spirit leaves the body, the development stops. This law is applicable to every material object. Matter transforms one shape to another when it is in contact with spirit. Without spirit, there is no transformation. The entire universe develops in that way. It emanates from the energy of the transcendence because of the spiritual force which is his, and it develops into gigantic forms like the sun, moon, earth, etc. There are 14 divisions of planetary systems, and although they are all different in dimension and quality, the same principle of development holds true for all. The spiritual force is the creator, and by this spiritual principle only, transformation, transition, and development takes place. Life is definitely not generated simply by a material reaction like a chemical combination, as many foolish men claim. Material interaction is set in motion by a superior being who creates a favorable circumstance to accommodate the spiritual living force. The superior energy handles matter in an appropriate way as determined by the free will of spiritual being. For example, building materials do not automatically react and suddenly assume the shape of a residential house. The living spiritual being handles matter appropriately by his free will and thus constructs his house. Similarly, matter is the ingredient only, but the spirit is the construct his house.
It's the
Creator. Matter is the ingredient only, but the spirit is the creator. Only a man with a poor fund of knowledge avoids this conclusion. The creator may remain unseen in the background, but that does not mean that there is a no creator. One should not be illusioned simply by the gigantic form of the material universe. Rather, one should learn to discern the existence of supreme intelligence behind all these material manifestations. The Supreme Being, who is the Supreme Intelligence, is the ultimate creator, the all-attractive personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Although one may not be aware of this, there is definite information of the creator in Vedic literature, such as the Bhagavad Gita and especially the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Thank you, Mataji. Please, can you please brief?
Mataji, it's confusing, Mataji.
Mataji, here Prabhupada is explaining about the 6 transformations, like first taking birth, growing, then remaining there for some time as youth and older, then reproducing and giving birth to children, then dwindling and ultimately death. This is happening only because of the existence of the soul. Transformation means transformation takes place only because of the existence of the soul. That is the our imagination can't conceive.
Yes, Mataji.
Anyone else wants to read? Only by the spiritual principle, transformation, transition, and development.
Yeah, Mataji.
Anyone else wants to read?
Yeah, చదవమంటారు మాతాజీ?
Yeah, చదవండి.
Life is definitely అక్కడ నుంచి మాతాజీ? Yeah. Life is definitely not generated simply by a material reaction like a chemical combination, as many foolish men claim. Material interaction is set in motion by a superior being who creates a favorable circumstance to accommodate the spiritual living force. The superior energy handles matter in an appropriate way, as determined by the free will of the spiritual being. For example, building materials do not automatically react and suddenly assume the shape of a residential house. The living spiritual being handles matter appropriately by his free will and thus constructs this house. Similarly, matter is the ingredient only, but the spirit is the creator. Only a man with a poor fund of knowledge avoids this conclusion. The creator may remain unseen in the background, but that does not mean that there is no creator. One should not be illusioned simply by the gigantic form of the material universe. Rather, one should learn to discern the existence of supreme intelligence behind all these material manifestations. The supreme being, who is the supreme intelligence, is the ultimate creator, the all-attractive personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Although one may not be aware of this, there is definite information of the creator given in Vedic literatures such as the Bhagavad Gita and especially the Srimad Bhagavatam. When a satellite is thrown into outer space, a child may not understand that there are scientific brains behind it. But an intelligent adult realizes that scientific brains on Earth are controlling the satellite. Similarly, less intelligent persons do not have information of the Creator and His eternal abode in the spiritual world, which is far beyond our range of visibility. But in actuality, there is a spiritual side, and spiritual planets which are more spacious and greater in number than planets in the material sky. From the Bhagavad Gita, we receive information that the material universe only constitutes a fraction, 1/4 of the creation. Such information is extensively available in the Srimad Bhagavatam and in other Vedic literatures. If living energy can be generated in the scientist's laboratory by the interaction of certain physical and chemical combinations, then why haven't the boastful material scientists been able to manufacture life? They should know definitely that spiritual force is distinct from matter and that such energy is not possible to produce by any amount of material adjustment. At present, Russians and Americans are undoubtedly very much advanced in many departments of technological science, but they are still ignorant of the spiritual science. They will have to learn from superior intelligence in order to make a perfect and progressive human society. The Russians are unaware that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the socialist philosophy is more perfectly described. The Bhagavatam instructs that whatever wealth exists, all natural resources, agriculture, mining, etc., is created by the ultimate creator, and therefore every living being has a right to take part of that. It is further said that a man should only possess as much wealth as is sufficient to maintain his body, and that if he desires more than that, or if he takes more than his share, he is subject to punishment. It is also stated that animals should be treated as one's own children. We believe that no nation on earth can describe socialism as well as the Srimad Bhagavatam. Living beings other than the humans can be treated as brothers and children only when one has a full conception of the Creator and the actual constitution of the living being. Man's desire to be deathless is realized only in the spiritual world. As stated at the beginning of this essay, a desire for eternal life is a sign of dormant spiritual life. The aim of human civilization should be targeted to that end. It is possible for every human being to transfer himself to the spiritual realm by the process of Bhakti Yoga, as described herein. It is a great science, and India has produced many scientific literatures by which the perfection of life may be realized. Bhakti Yoga is the eternal religion of a man. At a time when material science predominates all subjects, including the tenets of religion, it would be enlivening to see the principles of the eternal religion of man from the viewpoint of the modern society, of the modern scientist. Even of
Can
yes.
you summarize?
So ఇక్కడ బ్యూటిఫుల్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఇచ్చారు మాకు ప్రభుపాద లైక్ వెన్ జస్ట్ మెటీరియల్ ఉంటే సరిపోదు. ఇఫ్ యూ వాంట్ టు కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ హౌస్ దే షుడ్ బి అ స్పిరిట్ ఆల్సో. మ్యాటర్ ఉన్నంత మాత్రం దాని అంతటే అన్ని అవే వచ్చేవి మాకు. దే వాంట్ ఫాల్ ఇన్ ప్లేస్. దే షుడ్ బి స్పిరిట్ బిహైండ్ టు డూ ఆల్ ద థింగ్స్. And only we should take only our quota, Mataji, what is specific to us. Then we should not hanker for more. For that also we'll receive punishment.
Yeah, Mataji. Like the first verse of Isa Upanishad says, it's Ishavasyam Idam Sarvam Jagat.
Yeah. Yes, Mataji.
So everyone is getting their quota and we should not be greedy too. And the perfection of knowledge is that after understanding, a person can see equally a man or animal or
animal. Yeah, yes, Mataji.
Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Kavi.
Hare Krishna.
You read to hear right now. Hare Krishna, anyone else wants to read? Samyukta Mataji?
Yes, Mataji. Even Dr. S. Radhakrishnan admitted at a World Religion Conference that religion will not be accepted in modern civilization if it is not accepted from a scientific point of view. In reply, we are glad to announce to the lovers of the truth that Bhakti Yoga is the eternal religion of the world and is intended for all living beings who are all eternally related with the Supreme Lord. Sripada Ramanujacharya defines the word Sanatana or eternal as that which has neither beginning nor end. When we speak of Sanatan Dharma, eternal religion, we take this definition for granted. That which has neither beginning nor end is unlike anything sectarian, which has limits and boundaries. In the light of modern science, it will be possible for us to see Sanatana Dharma as the main occupation of all the people of the world, nay, of all living entities of the universe. Non-Sanatana religious faith may have some beginning in the annals of man, but there is no historic origin of Sanatana Dharma because it eternally remains with the living entities. When a man professes to belong to a particular faith, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, or any other sect, and when he refers to a particular time and circumstance of birth, such designations are called non-Sanatan Dharma. A Hindu may become a Muslim, or a Muslim may become a Hindu or Christian, etc. But in all circumstances, there is one constant. In all circumstances, he is rendering service to others. A Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, or Christian is in all circumstances a servant of someone. The particular type of faith professed is not Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana Dharma is the constant companion of the living being, the unifier of all religions. Sanatana Dharma is the rendering of service. In the Bhagavad Gita, there are several references to that which is Sanatana. Let us learn the import of Sanatana Dharma from this authority. There is reference to the word Sanatana, the 10th verse of the 7th chapter, in which the Lord says that he is eternal fountainhead of everything and is therefore Sanatanam. The fountainhead of everything is described in the Upanishads are the complete whole. All emanations of the fountainhead are also complete in themselves. But although many complete units emanate from the complete Sanatana fountainhead, the Sanatana head does not diminish in quality or quantity. That is because the nature of Sanatana is unchangeable. Anything that changes under the influence of time and circumstances is not Sanatana. Therefore, anything that changes whatsoever in form of quality cannot be accepted as Sanatana. To give a material example, the sun has been disseminating its rays for hundreds and millions of years, and yet, although it is a materially created object, its form and rays are still unchanged. Therefore, that which is never created cannot change in the formation and quality, even though he is the seeding source of everything. The Lord claims to be the father of all species of life. He claims that all living beings, regardless of what they are, part and parcel of him. Consequently, the Bhagavad Gita is meant for all of them. In the Gita, there is information of the Sanatana nature of the Supreme Lord. There is also information of his abode, which is far beyond the material sky, and of the Sanatana nature of the living beings. Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita also informs us that this material world is full of miseries in the shape of birth, old age, disease, and death. Even in the topmost planet of the material universe, Brahmaloka, these miseries are present. Only in his own abode there is a total absence of misery. In that abode there is no need of light from sun, moon, or fire. The planets are self-luminous. Life there is perpetual and full of knowledge and bliss. That is what is known as Sanatan Dharma. It is therefore natural to conclude that the living entities must return home back to Godhead to enjoy the life in Sanatan Dharma with Sanatana Purusha or the Purushottama, Lord Sri Krishna. They must not remain to rot in this miserable land of material existence. There is no happy in the material sphere, even in Brahmaloka. So plan and activities for elevation to higher planets within the material universe are carried out by those who are less intelligent. Less intelligent men also take shelter of demigods and only derive benefits which endure for a limited period. Thus, their religious principles and the benefits derived therefrom are only temporary. The intelligent man, however, abandons all engagement in the name of religion and takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus receives absolute protection from the Almighty Father. Sanatan Dharma is therefore the process of Bhakti Yoga by which one can come to know the Sanatana Lord and his Sanatana abode. By this process, only one can return to the spiritual universe, the Sanatana Dharma, to take part in the Sanatana enjoyment prevailing there. Those who are followers of Sanatana Dharma may henceforward take up those principles in the spirit of Bhagavad Gita. There is nothing barring anyone from adopting the eternal principles. Even persons who are less enlightened can return to Godhead. This is the version taught by Srimad Bhagavatam and by the Supreme Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Mankind should be given a chance to take advantage of this opportunity because Bhagavad Gita was spoken in the land of Bharatavarsha. Every Indian has the responsibility to broadcast the message of real Sanatana Dharma in the other parts of the world. Especially at the present moment, misguided men are suffering in the darkness of materialism, and their so-called learning has enabled them to discover the atomic bomb. They are consequently on the verge of annihilation. Sanatana Dharma, however, will teach them about the real purpose of life, and they will benefit by its propagation.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Can you brief whatever?
So Sanatana Dharma is eternal, Mataji.
Yeah.
Whether he is Hindu, Muslim, or Christian, whatever the section is, they have to serve the Lord. That is called Sanatana Dharma. And so wherever planets he goes, there also he has like all the miseries of life, birth, death, and old age. సో బ్రహ్మలోకానికి వెళ్ళినా కూడా ఇవన్నీ ఈ 4 ఉంటాయి అన్నమాట. సో అందుకనేసి ఫైనల్ గా ఏంటంటే మనం కృష్ణాన్ని రీచ్ అవ్వాలి, సనాతన, దట్ ఈస్ ద సనాతన అన్నమాట. సుప్రీం లార్డ్ ని రీచ్ అవ్వాలంటే వీ హ్యావ్ టు మాతాజీ పాయింట్.
And here he explains Om Purnamada Purnamadam.
Yes, Mataji. He's the eternal foundation of everything and is therefore Sanatanam. So like the example, there is sun rays, Mataji.
Yeah. And here Krishna, Prabhupada is explaining that how the spiritual world is like there is no need of illumination or separate sun or moon, and when a person goes there, he will never come back.
Yes, Mataji.
Atad pasayate suryanasa sankana. Thank you very much, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
Mataji, yeah, Mataji, please.
నవవిధ భక్తి ఇందాక చదివారు కదా మాతాజీ. సో ఒక్కొక్క భక్తి ఒక్కొక్క డెమిగాడ్ ఫాలో అయినప్పుడు దే రీచ్ కృష్ణ, రైట్ మాతాజీ?
అంటే
ఇఫ్ వి ఫాలో వన్ థింగ్ పాసిబుల్ మాతాజీ,
ఫాలో అయినా కూడా we can reach Krishna. That's what Prabhupada was explaining. There are 9 forms of bhakti. For each he gave an example of how a person achieved perfection by following that form of bhakti. Like Parikshit Maharaj by Shravanam, Sukhdev by Kirtanam, and so on.
So even if we follow, we can reach Krishna, right, Mataji?
Instead of following all the 9 paths, that's what even one, if we follow perfectly, we can reach Krishna. That's
perfectly. Yes, Mataji. Perfection should be there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
We will start from next chapter. Next. Thank you very much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Pranam, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Thank you.